Hello and welcome back to the fourth section of our React for Designers course. Now, what we're going to learn this time is how to do a little bit of animation, such as this button here, and also a nice transition from the very beginning, which is super easy to do, so you can start applying that to your own website. Alright, so let's get started. First thing first, I want to show you how I can make the Learn To into its own line, because that has been bothering me a little bit. So we're gonna add a line break tag BR right here. So like this, Learn To, it's its own line and it looks much better for our title right here. Now, I'm speaking strictly for this title that we have because it was kind of weird to have apps on its own line, and oftentimes in design you have to manipulate these to look better and to make it more readable. But that being said, let's just refocus back on the animations. We're gonna go to header.css. We're going to learn how to apply a mouse over effect on this buy button right here. Now we know that the buy button is right here. So what we're gonna do is type header and then button and then add colon and hover, then curly brackets, and we're gonna apply the properties for which the animation is gonna end with. So the first thing is we're gonna set the background to white when we mouse over. And already when you mouse over this, you can see that it's changing. We're also gonna change the box shadow. Now the box shadow is basically the drop shadow. The first value is gonna be the X value, so 0. Usually you never want to have anything else than 0 for the X position. And then the Y value, which is 10, and then the spread of the shadow, which is 20. And then we're gonna set it to a RGBA color. Again, red, green, blue, and alpha to 0.0.25. So that's 25%. So now we have this beautiful drop shadow when the mouse is hovering it. But of course, we need something that is a little bit more smooth in terms of transition. So that's where the transition comes in. So on the original button, which is right here, not on the hover, we're gonna set to transition, and we're gonna set to, let's say, starting with the duration, which is 1 second. So when you do that and you mouse over, you can see that there's a nice transition going on. Another thing that I love to do is to make the button float a little bit, as if there's this button that floats and coming towards you. And I think that's really nice. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna set the transform to translate Y, and then we're gonna set to -3 pixels. And you can see that it's kind of floating. It's really nice. Of course, you can use any of these properties, such as rotate, for example. And again, I'm doing this not necessarily because we're gonna use it, but just to show you that it's possible. So you can see you can do really cool stuff using multiple properties, multiple animation transforms to your UI elements. But you know, for this course, we're just gonna stick to the translate Y. The next thing we're gonna learn is about keyframes animation. So for that, we're gonna apply it to the title here and the text here. We're gonna go to the global CSS where our hero is, and then we're gonna call the animation right here. So we're gonna type keyframe, and then we're gonna name it hero animation, curly brackets. And using keyframe animations, you can have 0% to 100%. We're gonna start with the beginning, which is 0%. And then the end is gonna be 100%. So the beginning is gonna have opacity 0, and the end is gonna have opacity 1. We're also gonna transform using the translate Y 20 pixels, and then transform translate Y 0. So what it means is that it's gonna start a little bit further down by 20 pixels, and then it's gonna transition to its correct position, which is the original position that we have in our design. So now that we have our animation set up, we just need to apply that to the element that we want to use this animation. So this is our H1, which is this title right here, and we're gonna start with the animation, which is called hero animation. So right now it doesn't do anything. We need to set a duration as well. So animation duration to, let's say, 3 seconds. Now if we save and we refresh this, you can see that it's already starting to come to life. Now what you're noticing is that when I refresh this, it doesn't really start with an opacity of 0. So in order to fix this, we're gonna start with the opacity 0, so that when the user loads the page, it's not gonna have like the white text right away and then suddenly it disappears and then it comes back. So instead I'm gonna add an opacity of 0. So when I refresh my page, it does the animation, it starts from opacity of 0, but then at the very end it just restarts and it stops there. So to fix this, we actually need to do animation fill mode forwards. So now I refresh it, it does this, and it stays like that. And that solves our problem. The other thing I want to explain is about the timing function, which is super important in animation, because right now it's a linear animation and it's kind of like boring if you wish. So we're gonna use something that is more lifelike, like a ball, or like it's accelerates at the beginning and then it slows down at the end. So we're gonna use animation. It's called timing function. And here we have a bunch of presets that we can use. The closest to the ones that I personally like is the first one. So we're gonna select this one, but we're gonna manipulate the data a little bit. Set it to 0.2, 0.8, and then 0.2 again. And you're gonna notice the difference when I do this. So at the very beginning, it's kind of a little bit faster, and then at the end, it becomes slower. And this is really nice when you apply this to the buttons as well. Otherwise, it's always slow. Now let's try to apply the same timing function for our button. So let's go back to our header.css. Let's find the hover state, and let's use the transition inside our original button. Now, when you use transition, you can set the cubic again using the same values, and I'm gonna change the timing a little bit, like what I did earlier, and then I save. And now when I mouse over, it's a lot faster, it feels more smooth. So let's go back now to our index.css, where we can also apply the same animation to our text, but also our button when the user first loads the website. So I want to show you that instead of writing like 4 lines of code, we can do in a single line of code by using the animation, which is the general property. And if you follow the order correctly, starting with the name of the animation, and then the duration, which is 3 seconds, and then forwards, and then your cubic. So I'm just going to copy and paste this cubic value. Now you see that both of them have exactly the same animations, but we're going to make it even more interesting by using a delay. So the delay is right after duration, so animation delay. We're gonna set it to 0.1 second. So if we refresh, this is a little bit slower. I can even make it more obvious by doing 1 second. And you can see that 1 second later, this appears. But let's put it back to 0.1. And then for this one, the value has to be right after the duration, which is 3 seconds. And I'm gonna set to 0.2 second. So as you can see, it's exactly the way that I want. But of course, don't forget to put the opacity to 0 at first, otherwise it was kind of weird at the beginning, but now it looks fine. The other thing I want to do is to apply a hover effect for my watch the video button. So I'm gonna go to hero, and right underneath I'm gonna write hero and an A column hover. I'm gonna make it a background white and the color to black. So this is a very simple technique where you simply use the opposite color. So for your button, you know, if it was white, it just goes to black. Or if it was black, it goes to white. And then we need to add the transition, of course. Transition to 0.8. And then set the cubic timing function 0.2, 0.8, and 0.2. Cool. So using these techniques, you can definitely do the same thing for the hovering state for either the logo or these text. And this you can apply a different style, have different animations. Instead of translate, you can use rotate or scale. So you can do anything you want using these animation techniques for your own website. And again, I highly encourage you to play and experiment your own animations and your own website, your own buttons, so that you can create something really unique for your audience. So I'll see you on the next course.